Dober večer. Jaz bom začel v slovenščini. Se slišimo? Zato, da bom čisto na kratko predstavil načrt najnega pogovora, pa Claire samo. Potem bova pa šla na angleščino in do konca večera bomo v angleščini. Tako da upam, da ste bili vsi obveščeni o tem. Torej, mogoče bi začel s tem, kako sem spoznal našo današnjo gostjo. Prej sva z Matejem začunala, da je bilo to natančno 11 let nazaj, oziroma 11 pa pol let nazaj, ko sva bila z Matejem povabljena na prvo konferenco o raziskovanju doživljanja, ki bomo zdaj v nadaljevanju rekli prvo osebno raziskovanje ali pa fenomenološko raziskovanje. Ne se ustrašiti te zapletene besede, ampak hočemo reči samo raziskovanje človekovega doživljanja. In to naj je en inštitut oziroma vodja enega inštituta iz Berkeleyja v Kaliforniji povabil na, je rekel, to bo tako preprosto srečanje nas, ki se s tem ukvarjamo, nekaj nas bo prišlo in potem bo več ali manj prosti pogovori, sploh ni treba predavanj pripravljati. In vsaj jaz sem pričakoval, da bo to res eno tako neformalno druženje, nekako kolegov, ki se začenjamo ukvarjati s to temo. Ko sva pristala tam v Berkeleyju, sva najprej ugotovila, da to seveda ne bo v kaki dolgočasni učilnici, ampak da bo se to dogajalo na prelepem objektu enih 50 kilometrov severno od San Francisca, ki ga je ena skupina budistična, tibetanska budistična skupina kupila od hotela, ki je bil prej z 10 zvezdicami, $1200 na noč so ostale sobe in potem je to bilo preurejeno v budistični odmik. To se je dogajalo na hribčkih, kjer smo srnice so hodile okrog nas, tisti jackrabbiti veliki so se sprehajali. Torej, to je bilo prvo presenečenje, da je bilo res fantastično okolje našega druženja. Počasi, ko sem spoznaval teh 15-16 ljudi, s katerimi smo se družili tam, sem tudi ugotavljal, da mogoče mi da tem čist ne paše v to skupino, ker so to sami vrhovi raziskovanja doživljanja v tistem trenutku. To mi je počasi postalo jasno, ko je en od kolegov razlagal, kako so v njegovi srednji šoli, ki se je reklo Eton, se učili na pamet, iz čistega upora proti učiteljem so se na pamet cele brate Karamazove naučili in potem med mašo namesto maše recitirali. Potem nekdo drug, ki sem šele potem povezal, da mi njega učimo kot enega od avtorjev najbolj obširnega učbenika za kognitivno znanost, Max Wellmans je bil tam in tako naprej. Ampak najbolj mi je v spominu ostalo pa čiščenje posode, ker smo za sabo vedno morali kljub neskončno elegantnemu settingu smo morali sami čistiti za sabo posodo in pospravljati. In z eno drobčkeno Francozinjo sva nekajkrat skupaj čistila in potem brisala krožnike. In to je bila naša današnja gostja Claire. Zdaj pa upam, da bom prav to izgovoril. Petitmengin, something like that. I still haven't finished a little bit more in Sloveniji. In ona je razlagala, to je bilo 11 let nazaj, kako je v bistvu pač ona se ukvarja z razkovanjem doživljanja, z tem, čemur bi rekli zdaj empirična fenomenologija, da v zadnji pa njo najbolj zanima meditacija, raziskovanje meditacije, ampak v tistem času, torej 11 let nazaj, je bilo to še nekaj zelo nenavadnega v znanosti. Počasi je že prihajalo v znanost, ampak tam so nam rekli, to je bad career move, da bi se zdaj ukvarjal človek z meditacijo. Večina nas, ki so vsaj malo, vidim veliko mojih kolegov tukaj ukvarja s kognitivno znanostjo, vemo, da se je v zadnjih 10 letih bistveno spremenilo, da je to zdaj postalo nekaj povsem navadnega raziskovanja meditacije, da zdaj je zelo pogosta slika, da vidimo menihe budistične priključene na EEG čelade, ki potem merimo možganske valove med meditacijo in tako naprej. In to križišče ali pa to stičišče med znanostjo in meditacijo, to je tema našega današnjega pogovora. En prvih, ki se je tega lotil, ali pa vsaj prvih, ki se je tega lotil res sistematično, ki je bil prej neuroznanstvenik, zdravnik in je potem postal dober prijatelj z Dalaj Lamo, je bil Francisco Varela. Študenti kognitivne znanosti ga verjetno poznate kot enega od avtorjev enega večjih sklopov, ki mu mi rečemo paradigme v kognitivni znanosti, ki mu rečemo utelešena kognicija, mogoče bolj meditacijsko orientirani, ga pa poznate kot tistega, ki je prirejal srečanja z Dalaj Lamo dolga leta v Dharamsali, kjer je on zbral 7, 8, 9 vrhunskih znanstvenikov, fizikov, nobelovcev, filozofov, na drugi strani pa je Dalaj Lama zbral nekaj lam in potem so bile te debate o takih bistvenih vprašanjih znanosti in religije. Ne vem, verjetno ste že slišali, da to je bil Francisco Varela, ki je to organiziral in on je bil učitelj in prijatelj od naše današnje gostje. In on je bil en od najbolj zanimivih in plodnih do svoje prerane smrti znanstvenikov, ki je poskušal na različne načine združevati meditacijo in znanost. In upam, da bo nam lahko naša gostja kaj o tem tudi povedala. Ona je pri njem doktorirala, raziskovala je doživljanje intuicije, kar tudi upam, da bomo kaj slišali o tem. Zelo fantastično zanimiv začetek njene kariere, ki je pa bil sam začetek. Potem se je ukvarjala z nečim, čemur zdaj rečemo neurofenomenologija, kar pomeni združevanje teh nevroloških raziskav in raziskovanja doživljanja. Tam je naša gostja avtorica zelo zanimivih študij epilepsije, kjer nismo samo zvedli, kakšni so električni valovi možganov med epileptičnim oziroma pred epileptičnim napadom, ampak smo zvedli tudi, kakšno je doživljanje in ena od zelo zanimivih posledic njene raziskave je bilo, da so ljudje, udeleženci te raziskave, se naučili prepoznavati en dan naprej, kdaj bodo imeli napad. Torej, sam raziskovalna tehnika je to povzročila. Ampak najbolj pa je znana Claire potem, da je avtorica metode, ene od dveh najbolj uveljavljenih metod raziskovanja doživljanja, ki zdaj rečemo Micro-phenomenologija. In to bo center našega današnjega pogovora in tudi obljublja je, da bomo eno malo vajico naredili, upam, da nimate nič proti temu. Tako da, če se strinjate, bova začela malo z njenim ozadjem in potem bomo šli v vse te teme, ki sem jih zdaj naštel. Preden začneva, bi se rad zahvalil Žanu, Evi in Društvu za razvijanje čuječnosti. Morda bom še nekaj povedal na koncu o našem centru za kognitivno znanost, znotraj katerega imamo skupino Observatorij, ki poskuša po eni strani raziskovati meditacijo, po drugi strani pa uporabljati meditacijo za raziskovanje zavesti. In ravno zaradi tega se čutimo toliko blizu Clairinemu delu, ki je skoraj natančno to. Danes smo jo že čisto izčrpali, ker smo imeli že 5-urni razgovor zjutraj z njo, tako da bodimo nežni do nje. Zdaj pa, če se strinjate, bi zdaj preklopil v angleščino in začel z najnim pogovorom. So, Claire, I did a not so short introduction of your background. I would like to welcome you now in English. Thank you for coming. And then I guess we should start with your background, if you perhaps if you are so kind to explain us a little bit where you're coming from, what was your studies, let's say, before meeting Varela, and then we'll go on.
Okay. I try.
Yes, let's try. Let's do our best.
First, I would like to thank you, Urban, very much, and to thank you, Jeanne, for inviting me. And I'm very happy to be there tonight and to discover Ljubljana. It's my first time in Slovenia, so I'm very happy to be there. So I began with studies in philosophy when I was when I was a teenager. Philosophy in Paris at the Sorbonne. My father wanted me to do mathematics, but I wanted to do philosophy. I was very determined. But unfortunately, I was very disappointed by philosophy because, of course, it was sometimes very exciting, but very abstract. And I found that this knowledge was disembodied and very abstract. And so, except one course which was devoted to Indian Buddhism. And the professor, Guy Bugeaud, was a very embodied teacher, and I was completely passionate, very, very interested in this course. I so interested that I spent 4 years to learn Sanskrit in order to be able to understand a little more than through translations. So I did that for 4 years. I wrote, how do you say, un mémoire, comment dire? A master thesis on emptiness in Indian Buddhism. It may seem very pretentious to do that, but really. But at that time, nobody was interested in that. Nobody knew meditation. It was very, very difficult in the 70s to find a book on Buddhism or meditation or the Madhyamaka school, the school which I was studying. So, and after a few years, in fact, meanwhile I had 2 children, and I had to earn my money, and it was really very difficult to earn money with a thesis on emptiness. So I changed. I began to study computer science, and I began a computer scientist, and I became. Sorry for my English. And after a few years, I became a consultant in information system design. Information system design is the collection and organization of a huge amount of information used by companies. So I did that, and I began to do research on that in a university, in information system design. I was specialized in the information which is difficult to collect, which is very implicit, very embodied.
Yeah, which sounds very much like experience, which is also very difficult to play.
Yeah. Very. So it was a good way to learn, to begin to learn to do that. And but the university told me, "Oh, you don't have a PhD. You must have a PhD to be a teacher in a university." So I began to look for a thesis advisor in information system design. And I remember that once I was somebody offered me a book. The title was The Construction of Reality. It was a book on constructivism. Mm-hmm. And there was a paper of a man called Francisco Varela. I had never heard of him. And in a little note at the very end of the chapter, there was a little note of saying, all this is inspired by the thought of the Madhyamaka school. So I thought, somebody knows Madhyamaka. It was maybe almost 20 years after my master thesis.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I've never heard anybody knowing, pronouncing this word. Yeah.
So before you go, you go to now we are approaching meeting Varela, but just before you go, would you say that was complete detour, that information system design, or do you think it had some role in your development as a consciousness researcher?
In fact, it may seem completely different.
Yeah.
But I think it was a way where there is a point where all this met. And especially I can see this, especially now, I study, I developed this method of interview, and now there is a problem of analyzing the data.
Yes.
And for analyzing the data, in fact, I was very inspired by the method I used in information system design. So it's very useful for me now. So at least there is this convergence.
A colleague of mine yesterday observed that actually your path through research of consciousness and cognition is very similar to the path of cognitive science right now, which is a lot of emphasis is on computers and artificial intelligence, but now also a lot of meditation is coming in. So I think it's very parallel to your path. It's sort of similar to what we all have to go through in cognitive science. But I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Please go on to your...
So I was the note on Madhyamaka, and a few months later, a colleague of mine offered me, again, a book, and this book was The Embodied Mind. Oh. And so in that book, Francisco Varela describes well his relationship with Buddhism and the fact his interest for Buddhism and meditation. And I said, I would like him to be my thesis advisor. I would like him. And I didn't know where he was living, and I knew nothing. And by chance, I met him in Prague in a conference. I went to the conference to present a paper, and he was there. And I asked him, would you accept to be my thesis advisor? He said, let's see, let's meet in Paris. He was living in Paris like me. So
he was, by the way, Varela came from Chile. He had to escape Chile because of this Allende takeover. Pinochet takeover. He returned for Allende's new government. I'm sorry. But then he spent the rest of his life in Paris. So.
Yeah. So, and in fact, quickly I began a thesis under his supervision. And I have to say that I was very lucky, but because at the same time, in 3 months, I met my husband, the man who is now my husband. I met my thesis advisor, and I met, which is very important for me, of course, Lama Gandun, who was a meditation teacher. He was an old man who had spent 30 years of retreat, of silent solitude, alone in a cave in Tibet and Nepal. And so I began to study meditation.
Which direction?
Mahamudra is Tibetan, school of Tibetan Buddhism. Yeah.
So can you, before we go to Varela, can you just say some words about your thesis? We have a cuckoo.
No, I'm sorry, I forgot to...
Well, you can switch it off, or it's nice sound.
No, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I should have...
Yeah. So let me just... Claire, after they met with Varela, obviously he accepted to be her mentor. And she wrote a thesis about experience of intuition. And then she also published some papers, and that was one of the ways how we encounter her work, which is, so her first work was already quite interesting. So perhaps you could, I think it's better that you tell us a little bit than that I lecture about your papers.
Yes, so he proposed me to work on the intuition. But I didn't want to do a thesis of the philosophies of intuition from Plato to Husserl or something like that. I wanted to study the experience of intuition, that I defined as the emergence of an idea without the intermediary of a deductive mechanism. So, and so the problem was how to study the experience of intuition. And at that time, we discovered a method called the entretien d'explicitation, explicitation interview, or how to make explicit the implicit.
Which was psychotherapy method at that time?
No, not at all. Not at all. No, it was used in companies, it was used to make
but
explicit.
invented by the psychotherapist, because Vermeer was the inventor, was sort of... No? Okay, sorry, yeah.
No, it was not used. Sorry, Urban, it was not used at all for psychotherapy.
It's okay.
No.
Yeah, okay.
No, he used different methods for therapy. But this one was really to help a skilled person to describe what he does, in fact, his experience.
Yeah, goal-oriented.
Goal-oriented.
That was
it was very goal-oriented. The actions he does, in order to perform, to realize, to do something.
Yes, I think I stand corrected. Actually, what you write is that there are methods of some like hypnotherapy and some other therapies used in this interview. But it was not used for therapy.
Yes,
I think.
yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Or not even that.
No. He used, for example, some techniques of Milton Erickson, some modes of questioning of Milton Erickson, but it's not.
Okay.
It was not in a therapeutic
Forget
context.
therapy. Nothing about therapy. Yes.
Milton Erickson, I'm hypnotherapist, so.
I think SFU students know.
Yeah, probably.
The inventor of hypnotherapy, a great magician of therapy. So yeah. So intuition.
So briefly, what happened is I began to do interviews with people who had intuitions, so artists, mathematicians, philosophers, or people who had intuitions in their everyday life. And what was amazing, that after doing many interviews and analyzing them, it seems that intuition seems to be something completely which happens randomly, spontaneously, unpredictably. And finally, we discovered that there is a state which is favorable, which favors the emergence of an intuition, a specific attentional state, an attention which is very open, which is very receptive, which doesn't look for, is not goal-oriented, and also anchored in the body. And so a state favorable to the emergence of an intuition, even if it doesn't work.
Yes, but it's more likely that that's where we will find it. Yeah.
And specific processes to go into that state. And for some expert people, some techniques to do these gestures.
Yeah.
So there was, I remember when I presented these first results to Francisco Varela in his office at La Salpêtrière in Paris, the hospital, because he was working in
hospital and also scientific work.
Yeah. He told me, you got the core of your thesis. It is a generic dynamic structure of the intuitive experience. So what it was interesting, is that from the description of singular experiences of different people emerged a generic structure. So he was interested in that. And so after that, after my PhD defense, he proposed me to work on the anticipation of epileptic seizures.
Okay.
So with his team, he has discovered, he was at that time a neuroscientist. He had just discovered that, in fact, until now, epileptic seizures. Until that time, epileptic seizures were considered as completely unpredictable, which is one of the main causes of the poor quality of life of epileptic people, because they cannot drive, they cannot do anything dangerous, potentially dangerous, or even cook.
Because you never know when it will strike you.
You never know. You never know. And they discovered that an epileptic seizure, at least in some types of seizure, was preceded a few minutes before by a particular neuronal activity. And he asked me, with your method, could you interview epileptic people in order to try if this neuronal activity corresponds to an experience, something that they can feel, something that they live? And so I did that.
Can I just interrupt?
Of course.
A little footnote here. This is, this perhaps it sounds very normal. That yes, of course, it's good to ask people what are they experiencing while we are measuring their EEG, but that was not normal in science at all until like 20 years ago or 15 years ago. So this is a huge, huge step forward. I think we have Igor Raunik here. Oh, Igor, this is our probably most prominent epileptologist. and he was doing exactly that stuff here with children, epileptology. I know not officially, but I know that you were collecting some data about experience on site. Yeah. But that was something quite interesting, and now this is part of a lot of cognitive science that we do parallel tracks, sort of brain research and experience. But at that time, that was completely new. So I just wanted to make a footnote and say something to each other. Please go on.
No. So yes, we discovered some specific sensations announcing a seizure, even long before, not just before, but some hours before. And and these sensations, these warnings, this could be. We began to work on non-pharmacological therapies of epilepsy, because the consciousness of these early sensations can help epileptic patients to at least to prévoir, to foresee, and even sometimes to stop the seizure. The seizure. So there was a project, a very interesting project in that direction. And
yes.
so,
perhaps I would just this parallel tracks of on one side measuring brain activity and on or whatever measurement that you can do from outside. It can be also psychological testing or something, and on the other side, trying to see what this person actually experiences. Varela was probably he was not the first person to suggest this, but he was the first to do this, to make this true, very precise methodology, and we are still teaching this. His 96 paper, and he called this Neurophenomenology. And Claire is now one of the leading people of neurophonology in the world. So perhaps...
Yes, thank you.
Well, that's how we lecture about you. Okay. Don't correct me here.
I'm not very skilled on the neuro side.
Yeah. There's so many people skilled on the neuro side. We have, so can you tell a little bit about that, perhaps?
Yes. So at that time, when... at that time of this project on seizure anticipation, Varela was creating the Micro-phenomenological Project. And the idea, as you told, the idea of this project is that it seems impossible, the hypothesis of the project is it is impossible to study the human mind only through objective objective measures. And it is indispensable to also study the experience. Because until that time, to study, for example, emotion, you could only rely on objective measures. So, for example, the rhythm of the
heart,
or the heart, or the
skin conductance,
the color of the skin, or the breathing, the rhythm of breathing, and something like that. It was forbidden, really, to ask the person, what do you live?
What do you go through? What's your experience? Yeah.
So, while it is really indispensable, Varela said, in fact, we need that even to interpret the neuronal activity. It is necessary to have an idea of what the person does inside.
Yeah. We somehow think, anyway, we know what we experience, so let's just see the brain activity. But recently we are finding out that we actually don't know what we experience, or we just see through this. So I think, so there are two parts. There is this neural part of neurophenomenology, and then there's this experiential part. And this is where you come in. This part, you developed then much more thoroughly the method how to get to this part. And I think we should get there, but just before we do that, and this is going to be called micro-phenomenology, a big word for just learning about the experience. But just before that, could you tell us a little bit, so before we go on, about Varela's attitude towards this connection between, on one side, experience, and to that side, meditation praxis, and on the other side, a serious neuroscientific, naturalistic work. What was his attitude toward that? Because to us, it seems very clear what he did, but we don't know how it was completely new at that time, so we're not quite sure how he got there.
Yeah, so Francisco Varela was a biologist and then a neuroscientist with the development of neuroscience. He was also an expert meditator, practitioner. In fact, after he left Chile, when Pinochet came,
a coup, and
he went to the US, and he was very disoriented, very traumatized. And I don't know the exact story. I don't remember. But once he was invited by a friend to, how do you say that? A presentation, a conference of Chogyam Trungpa. Do you know Chogyam Trungpa? A very well-known Tibetan teacher, meditation teacher. And he was very, very impressed, and in fact, he began to meditate with Chogyam Trungpa. And so he has been meditating for many years. And after Trungpa died, he met, a few years after that, he met another teacher in Nepal, Tulku Orgen, who was an old Tibetan teacher in the tradition of Mahamudra and Dzogchen. It's two Tibetan traditions, very close. And so he has this very deep practice, which was, and also he was a neuroscientist. Neurophenomenology was a way to try to articulate both. But he said that until it was possible to talk about neurophenomenology. It was in the paper the paper on neurophenomenology is 1996.
Yes.
It was for years and years. It was impossible to even to pronounce the word consciousness in
Within
cognitive
science.
science,
Yeah.
in science and cognitive science. So he had he told me, for almost all my life, I had these two. I was split into two parts: the meditator and the scientist, and it was very painful for him. And at the end of his life, he couldn't. He couldn't. He had to stop this effort of separating both. So. And I remember, but at the same time, he was. I don't know if I can just. Yes, at the end of his life, he died in 2001. He told me many times, Claire, I would like to stop research. I would like to stop research because meditation is so much more joyful, so much more.
Yeah.
And I remember he was sometimes teaching meditation, and once somebody in the assistance asked him, what is the most important for you, the scientist side or the meditation?
Yeah.
And he answered, when I will die, what do you think will be more important for me?
Yeah. Yes.
So it was, yes, Francisco.
Yeah, I think many of us are having the same problem. Still, he gave us so much in the scientific side, so it's So, but I think his encounters with Dalai Lama, I think Dalai Lama really encouraged him to do science more. I think he was very and also he brought, after Varela's death, Dalai Lama became a regular visitor to psychology conferences, neuroscience conferences. He still is, So it would be really bad if he just stopped science, I think. Yeah.
Of course. But he had to.
Yeah. So I think we should go now to micro-phenomenology.
Okay.
And here I will really leave the track to you. So please take your time and just tell us about your work, about what is micro-phenomenology, how do you get the first person. First person means experiential data, and you promised an exercise. We are waiting for it. Yeah.
Okay. So micro-phenomenology, this method starts from the observation that our attention is not from that. Sorry, that a large part of our experience remains unnoticed. And I don't like to say unconscious because there is all the Freudian unconscious. It's not this. It's not that type of unconscious. It's just unnoticed, unrecognized. In phenomenology, we say pre-reflective. For example, if I reach the bottle, my attention is on the bottle. It's not. I'm hardly conscious of the movement of my limb and of the sensations, inner sensations I had in my muscle and the articulations that initiate the movement of the limb. I'm not conscious of that. If, for example, if I'm writing a paper, my attention is on the content of the ideas I want to express. I'm hardly aware of, for example, the contact of my fingers with the computer keys or the pen, of the tensions in my back, on the successions of inner images or slight emotions, slight choices that I have to do in order to express my ideas. I'm completely absorbed into the content, and so in the what, and it is the same thing for many, maybe all our activities. Our attention is absorbed in the what, the content, to the detriment of the how. Mm-hmm. And micro-phenomenology, phenomenology in fact, but also micro-phenomenology, tries to help the interviewed person, through interview, to help the person reorient her attention from the what to the how, through a specific mode of questioning, which is very, very simple, non-inducive, and it is the main goal of to make this non-recognized how to bring it into awareness.
Yes. So just a side question. Mm-hmm. Why do you think we are constantly so much engaged in what? So I know what you are saying, I know what I am saying, but I am so little aware of how. I don't know how my words become the sounds. I don't know. Now I notice that my hand is moving, but I know how. I don't know how. Again, I know what is going on, but how is this going on? I have no idea. Why do you think? And when you start observing, it's really complex and a lot and interesting. Why aren't we aware of that more?
It has been shown that people who gesticulate are not aware of gesticulating.
Yeah, well, I just noticed my hand.
No, it's really, I don't know. I have no answer to this question.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, go on, if you can. Next time, we'll prepare the answer to that. So how does it work?
The interview?
Yeah.
So I just maybe before give a few examples of the domains of application. Mm-hmm. For example, yes. It has been used now in the cognitive domain to explore experiences as simple as an auditory experience. How do we listen to a sound? And it's the tactile experience, what it is to touch an object, and even in very, very simple experiences, there is a huge amount of pre-reflective, unrecognized experience. Yeah. It has been used in for the epileptic seizure to explore the experience of pain, to explore the experience of encounter meeting, the first meeting between a doctor and a patient. Mm-hmm. Very, very different experiences. Yeah. An encounter with a work of art in a museum. What is that experience? To explore the attentional skills of top athletes, or to very, very different experiences. And also, we tried the experience of surprise. And in fact, in most of this research, in almost all of them, we entered a dimension of experience which is very specific, where the separation between the sensorial modalities, seeing, yes, is less rigid, and the separation between body and mind, which seems usually very rigid, is more permeable,
yeah.
and also the separation between an inner space and outer space also dissolves somehow. So each time we go into this pre-reflective dimension and try to explore it, we met the strange dimension of experience where the separations are more permeable. And finally, we tried to use this method to explore the meditative experience.
Yes. Are we going here, or are we going to do the exercise first?
We go there.
Okay.
We go there through the exercise.
Okay, yeah, because this is the last part of this intro, and of course the thing we came for. We want to know, what did you find out, and how did you research the experience of meditation, of mindfulness meditation?
Yeah, it was just a pilot project. We have not studied meditation for years and years. It was just a pilot project where we interviewed 12 meditators from 5 to 45 years of experience. And we just tried, because we noticed that many scientific studies have studied the neural correlates of meditation. There are a huge amount of scientific studies on that topic.
On neural correlates and on psychological effects.
And the psychological effects.
We have now thousands of studies dealing, which is great, and but quite interesting that nobody, until Claire published her paper, actually was curious in scientific manner of the experience of meditation.
Yeah, that's we try to do, to explore meditative experience, and but to do that, we have no other mean than asking meditator what he lives, and even for advanced meditative practitioners, we are supposed to be acutely aware of their practice. This is not so easy to describe very precisely what they do when they practice, what they do or don't do, to describe their practice. Describing is a specific skill. So let me take an example. I will rely on my text for that part. A very widespread meditative technique, shamatha, consists in focusing your attention in your breathing. I'm sure you all know this technique, shamatha. And each time you realize that your attention has drifted, to come back to your breathing. So it's easy to describe, isn't it? But what does it mean to focus on your breathing, to focus your attention on your breathing? What do you do exactly to focus your attention? When you focus your attention, what do you focus? Where does this focusing occur? Does this focusing involve in a felt dimension, or also a visual dimension, or possibly an auditory dimension? Another question: once your attention is focused, how do you know that it is focused? Do you do anything to sustain this focusing? So these are micro-phenomenological questions. I continue a little. After a while, which may be very short, a very amazing phenomenon probably occurs. A virtual scene emerges in your experience, a virtual scene that becomes more vivid than the current situation is. So vivid that you completely forget that you were supposed to focus your attention on your breathing. For example, you imagine that you are walking on the beach and you forget your breathing. You can do this right now. It's my little exercise, if you agree. Just take your time to imagine that you are walking on the beach. So you leave this
Should we close
place,
the eyes? Or
if you want.
Let's do it.
And just make a sign when you have done it.
So we are imagining that we are walking on the beach.
You imagine that you are walking on the beach. You leave this place and you're walking on the beach. You walk on the beach. Go to the beach. Now, I propose that you silently answer a few questions. Did the scene you have just imagined, or you are imagining, appear instantaneously or progressively? In the latter case, if it appeared progressively, which sensorial dimension appeared first? The visual, the tactile, the auditory, the olfactory? While you were imagining this scene, were you still aware of your visual, auditory, bodily sensations here? Or did you at least partly lose contact with them, with some of them? So you can come back now. So you're walking on the beach, and after a while, that may be long, you realize that your attention has left your breathing and that you are not there anymore. What makes you realize that? Does this realization occur randomly, or do subtle cues draw your attention towards the fact that your attention has drifted? When you realize that, how do you leave the beach? Does the scene disappear instantaneously or progressively? Do certain sensations persist more than others? Which sensations from the current situation come back first? The visual, the auditory, the tactile? Finally, what do you do to come back to your breathing? How do you manage coming back? What is this? So all these questions are examples of the type of questioning that we use in micro-phenomenological interviews. Questions that are as non-inductive as possible, such as, when you do that, what do you do? It's very focused on a very micro action, but completely non-inducive. You don't introduce any presupposition. So, all in the context of the project, which was in fact founded by the Mind and Life Institute, we interviewed 12 meditators, in fact, and all of them agreed that interviews help them to become aware of subtle feelings and subtle micro-gestures, micro-acts they had not noticed before, which in turn helps them to perform these micro-gestures more accurately.
Can you give us an example of a micro-gesture?
For example, when an idea is emerging under the form of, even before being an idea, it seems that it may emerge under the form of a subtle tension, very subtle, that can be bodily felt. So you can notice or not, and if you notice it, you can just focus your attention on it, or let it develop. So it's a macro gesture would be
Can I, in your paper, you describe one of the two sort of findings of your research. You describe how people do to get into mind wandering, to the thing that you mentioned before. So you sit down, you want to meditate, you, for example, focus on your breath, or want to focus on your breath, and at some point you are already in some scene and mind wandering. And you describe this as a set of gestures and reactions to some tension. Can you explain this? This is a micro gesture going into the...
No, to sustain mind wandering, it seems that it's not only something that happens.
Yes.
You do something to sustain it.
Yes.
To sustain it.
To sustain mind wandering.
Yeah. And for example, the inner dialogue seems to be, I think we all know that, is a way to sustain it. To sustain it. I remember a woman who used the word of, I won't be able to translate the word in English, so I just dropped it.
We have Igor here, he can translate. You can just say in French.
Elle disait, c'est comme une... je me rappelle même plus le nom en français. The machine that will produce electricity.
Oh, generator.
A generator. Yeah. C'est comme... This dialogue is like a generator that sustains the light.
Oh, yes, yes. So like a generator or engine that actually keeps the mind wandering on.
But
Okay. So can I ask you? You write in your paper that some of the meditation teachers were informed about this, and actually they were part of the research, and that they felt that these findings might help them in teaching meditation. So I would like to know about that. We talked about that already, and you said we still have no proof that this will really help, but what do you think? And on the other side, what do you think is the benefit for science out of this kind of research?
So they find it useful because this may make them, this type of interviewing, make them more aware of their own meditative practice. And so it helps them to teach, of course, to be more aware of their...
And also to describe better what is going on.
Yeah. And...
scientific part?
Yeah. But for the teachers, the fact, so first, knowing more their own practice and also knowing more the way their student practice helps them to adapt their teaching to the particularities, to the difficulties of their students.
Yes.
To have a feedback of how their students practice, to how they understand a meditation instruction, misunderstand or sometimes misunderstand. Help them adapt, have a more precise teaching, more adapted to the different students. And for how, so it's a very different question, how this type of research can be useful for science.
Yes.
So I think it's the most interesting part that we are just starting is to with micro-phenomenology, we can begin to describe how we create an object, in fact, how we create an object.
How the objects
Yeah.
come into being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How this, the feeling we have that there are objects around us is emerge, and how, what is it?
So what happens when the perception starts and suddenly a camera?
Yeah.
I feel that I see a camera. That's what this is really micro details of.
Yeah. For example, we began to in another project, in fact, to describe the auditory experience, and we found that finally there are 3 modes of listening. The first mode is, there is a sound, and I immediately orient my attention towards the object at the origin of the sound. This is a blackbird there in the garden. And this mode of listening creates a separation between me there and the blackbird there, far from me, a distance.
This recognition of something outside of me.
Outside of me.
Yeah. So what you want to say is, I think you mentioned that before, that at the first moment, what we are not attentive to this because we are not so precise in observing our experience. But the first moment, there is no separation between the sound or whatever is there and
No, there is a separation. Very quickly, there is a separation.
Yeah, very quickly, but not in the first. If you're really precise, this separation becomes into being. It's not there all the time.
Yes. The goal, but it's very difficult to access this moment.
It's very difficult to get it. But
so we are not there now. In that study, we are not there. But we discovered that there is another mode of listening. You reorient your attention. You're not interested in the object anymore, but in the sound as a sound.
Yes.
In the song as a song.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. In the auditory qualities, you can do that, or imagine you do that. This creates a very different space.
Yes.
There is no me and the object, but the space between takes a certain thickness, a certain.
I see. Okay.
So the space is different, and now you can listen in a third way. You can be receptive to the sound. So the first one is what is this sound? The second one is how is this sound?
Yeah.
And the third mode is what it is like to feel this sound. And you are interested in what the sounds do to you. You let yourself be touched by the sound.
I see.
And in that case, when you listen like that, the separation, the frontier between the outside, a space, and inside is much more permeable.
I see,
so we do this type of thing. This
okay.
type of thing.
I get it,
How do we create different type of spaces through our gestures, our micro gestures? Because these are micro gestures. How we orient our attention.
But I think this second, especially the third type of the space that you mentioned, is very typical for meditation. We rarely do this. Normally we say, blackbird. It's very rarely that we just hear the sound without attaching the name or object to it. So what you're saying, you find out through this micro-phenomenology, I think it's very similar to what we find out through meditation.
Yes.
Would you?
Yeah. I would say that it's not so surprising. We explore experience, and meditation explore experience in another slightly different way.
Yes.
But I think in both cases we explore experience. There are not many.
So it's only right that we find out the same stuff. Okay, I will ask one more question. And then you can prepare your questions, and we'll have last 20, 25 minutes, if there is interest, for your questions. So start preparing, and then we have 1 or 2 mics that we go around, and please talk into the mic. But I will ask the last question now. How is your meditation practice going? What are you doing, and what's your attitudes towards meditation?
So since I met my Lama Gendun, so it was 25 years ago, I've been practicing Vipassana, and now much more Tibetan tradition, Mahamudra and Dzogchen. So I do meditation. I have almost daily meditation, but I do retreats, silent retreats.
Yes. How do you solve that problem that we mentioned before in connection to Varela? And I think many of us are encountered with it. How do you? Because meditation practice is really pulling most of us that start doing it, and we just want to go there. How do you? Obviously, you still didn't give up completely to the science and everything, but
for me, I've resolved. In fact, I have the hope to solve this problem by really researching meditation and focusing my research on the micro-phenomenology of meditation.
Yes.
And this means for me meditating very much more than I do in order to be able to explore these very subtle micro processes.
Yes. Good trick.
So
we try the same actually. We try to practice meditation in order to do science, but nobody wants to pay us for that. So.
That's a problem.
Yet, but we are working on this. Yes. Okay. Let's finish here, and I would ask for questions and for the mics to go around. We still have low battery. No, we have 20 minutes or 15 minutes for your questions, and then perhaps we'll wrap it up. So there's one.
May I thank you for the excellent evening. The questions are too many, so I may ask 1, 2, 3. Have there been any continuation for the work that had been done with the group of Michel Bollac and which you led in the past? Is there any continuity? Is there any practical applicability?
This is the epilepsy work.
Yeah, the epilepsy work, yeah.
Replicability or
no, applicability. Est-ce que c'est... are they continuing to use this method in their clinical work?
No. I'm sorry for that. It was not a method. It was just a try, a first pilot study on the early signs.
Yes.
And announcing a crisis, a seizure, and possibly the therapeutic use application.
But for the time being, there's no continuation.
To my knowledge, no. Maybe in other countries, but I don't think so.
Thank you.
Or very little, unfortunately.
Thank you. Yeah. The second question: what do you think about meditating and meditating with children? There is an activity in France, méditer, philosopher avec les enfants. What do you think about that?
I don't know. I never tried. I have no first-hand experience, knowledge of that. But I think my intuition would be that it would be very, very useful, very very important. Instead of giving them many video games and to help them.
But you didn't do with your children. You didn't do it.
My children?
Yeah.
No, no.
And the third question: the micro-phenomenology of let's say poetic creativity. Has there been any studies? Have you gone
of
creativity, poetic creativity, for example, the inspiration and the creation of artistic work.
Did we study?
Yeah.
A little. a little, especially recently with. It was not very systematic, but we did some work with Olafur Eliasson. I don't know if you know this him. He's very, very interested in the method, in the approach. He's a visual artist in Berlin, very well known all over the world, and a very nice person. And so we tried to study. We tried to study, in fact, the experience of his artworks. What do they do to us? And we went with a micro-phenomenological team, 10 young researchers. We went in Versailles, where he had an exhibition, and we did interviews on the experience of his artworks. And it's an example, but we tried.
But can I just add, in your 2006 paper, when you describe the interview method, you have some examples of how the idea is born. You know, how a person sits by the table and gets this
That was my question,
yeah. So obviously you did some of that.
Yeah.
Is that from that research or from some other these examples?
No, it was from my research on intuition.
Oh,
because intuition, in many cases, is the emergence of an idea. So I go on. I try to continue to explore this phenomenon, and also in meditation.
Because this is really, really interesting.
And even in meditation, when a phenomenon, an idea.
When we start meditating, I have a colleague, I think he's here, that I was doing Zen with, and he was jumping out and writing down ideas until the teacher said, "Please let's not do that now. Let's trust that they will still be there after we finish." So,
Thank you.
Thank you. More questions? There are two there. I think we'll start that, and then Matej. Let's start here.
Good evening. Thank you very much for tonight. Evenings, even in my case, during the listening, a couple of questions popped up. So I would have, let's say, 2, 3 of them. You said that you start with your research in the 70s already. So in all this long period of time, I wonder if in your research you include also taking the different ingredients like ayahuasca or mushrooms or something like that. That's number one question. Yeah. Did you include also, let's say, other
psychotropic?
Yes, psychotropic
helpers.
To reach different kind of results.
I didn't personally. I didn't. I know a few people who try to do that now with macro-phenomenology. So. If you are interested, I can tell you.
And then I would go into the second questions. In Slovenia, a couple of years ago, we also had INCO movement, the movement for spreading the innovation and later on intuition into the global society, into business world and so on. So I would like to ask you, when you were doing research for experiencing the intuition, and getting the ideas and etc. Did you get to the level how to implement your research, your knowledge, let's say, into the business world? Did you get some tools directly which would be used by the companies or government or, let's say, a real-life world?
No.
Okay.
I was not so interested. It could have been a possibility, and I was approached by some people in companies, but I had to make choices, and it was not my main interest.
Okay.
But it is interesting. It is interesting. I don't disagree with the idea, but it was just that I did something else.
I just have to say that my experience last day that we talk more with Claire of her is that she's really modest and direct. You know, yesterday I asked her one question and then she said, "Well, I just dozed off because I was so bored with this question." So And she also says, no, I don't know, very quickly and very modestly and honestly. So I'm guessing that doesn't mean completely no, but it's,
no, but I have a little part of answer to this. You know Otto Scharmer, who created the U theory, which is a theory about intuition. In Berlin, I think he lives in Berlin.
MIT, he developed it at MIT, but he's now in Berlin. He lectures in Berlin. Yeah.
So I have contact with him because he followed a course in micro-phenomenology. And
really?
So he will do that.
Yes.
He will do that.
Yes.
Use micro-phenomenology to help the development, the managers.
Yes.
Or deciders.
Decide and get the ideas. Yes.
Yeah,
this U-shaped theory, if you don't know it, this was developed in 80s, I think, or 90s at MIT. They tried to see how you get like intuitive ideas, mostly for the business, and obviously they also now sort of wanting to do some wanting to learn about the experience of it. Oh, interesting. Yeah. I told you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Matej, I think that was the question there.
Yes. Hi, Claire.
Where are you?
Here. It's somewhere in the middle.
You make this important distinction between the what of experience and the how of experience. And I've thought about it a lot. I tried to have a conversation about this with Ruban, but we didn't get very far. Maybe you can help. So I must say I don't understand this difference really, because when I look closer, I just see more of what. So more subtle what, but there is just more of what. So if I'm attentive to how I'm moving now my arm and gesturing and so on, I see more specific what's. Mm-hmm. So is this just a rhetorical difference, or is there something more fundamental?
It's difficult. I don't pretend to have the answers to all this type of questions, but I would like to give an example where I think the difference between the what and the how is more obvious. For example, you could imagine an elephant. You could imagine an elephant right now. So I'm sure that the content of this thought is very different for each of you. It's different. There are no two elephants, two identical elephants in the room. But your perceptual position in the imagined scene, if you imagined a scene, for some of you, I'm sure some of you imagined an elephant in a place, and so where you, for example, where you, yes, in where you. I'm sorry.
Where is your position? The point of view, you mean?
Yes, the point of view. The point of view. And I have a. Yes, were you there in your body? I'm sorry. I'm a little time. I'm difficult to explain.
I think what you want to say is: are you looking for the elephant from outside, or is there you in this picture? What is your point of view? Is that?
Yeah. Are you?
So very different kinds of perception
perceptual position.
Yeah.
You have a perceptual position. You must be in a certain perceptual position in relation with this elephant. You can see it. You can be in the scene with the elephant, or you can be outside the scene. So it is a perceptual position. You can be, you can be, for example, in your body, in the scene. You are in your body. You are in a zoo, and you look at the you look at the elephant, or you can be in a you said you are in a first-person perceptual position. You're in your body. You look at the elephant, or you can be in a third-person perceptual position. You're somewhere on the in the sky, and you look at you and the elephant. So it is very common to adopt different when you imagine a scene, to adopt different perceptual position. So this is the how of the scene. The perceptual position is related to the how. How do you imagine?
So what you want to say is it's both times it's what is the same, it's elephant, but how is quite different.
The what is very different. The what is the elephant you imagine?
Well, it's the same. So both times you would say, what is the elephant? The answer to what question is both times the elephant.
Yeah, is the
but
elephant.
The how is quite different.
The how is how do you imagine this elephant? Yeah. In which, for example, in which perceptual position are you?
Yeah.
And this is the how. So for you, it's another what?
Well, I don't want to press the issue now. But I mean, I could also say that the what of my perception, of my imagination of the elephant, includes the perception position. So I can describe what is there. So I can describe the elephant is far away from me, and I am looking at it from the outside, and so on and so on. So maybe it's just a rhetorical distinction. I wanted to explore that. So is this just more useful to say, okay, how and what? Because we can maybe talk better about it, or is there something more primary, something more fundamental in this distinction? And I'm not sure yet from what you told me.
We also speak on the content. The what is the content, and the how is the structure. It's even more complicated. Yeah. But we are exploring this.
Yeah, I think we'll skip that now because I would like to join the debate, but I won't. The one thing that we discussed today is that this gestural dynamic. So what I do when, for example, I start mind wandering during the meditation, this is something that is common. For example, what kind of thoughts I have, or what kind of, feelings I have, that can be quite different, and we are constantly engaged in that. But that dynamics of how it comes into this other mode of, for example, meditation, so a series of hows can be quite similar always, but we are normally not attentive to it. And of course, we can say this could be also what, but I think that's different. But let's leave it there. Is there some?
Just to give another example, very quickly, I tried to explain the auditory experience. You can. The what is the sound, but there are so many sounds you can listen to, you can hear. So the what is very. It is the what. It can be a bird. It can be. There are so many sounds, but there is a limited number of attentional position, of attentional way of modes of attention modes to listen to a sound. So your attention is oriented towards the source of the sound, toward the sound itself, or the feeling of the sound. So it is a how. How do you hear the sound? So it's another maybe more.
Next time we'll just dedicate the whole evening to this question. Is there some more question? One more question I think we can take. Yes. The mic is coming there.
I couldn't help it, but I really need to share. I'd like to share some experience that I had while I was learning transcendental meditation. We had some questions. in the beginning, how we can avoid all these perceptions, sensorial perceptions, to draw us away from our goal to meditate, to not be interrupted while meditating. And I remember our teacher told us something very, very interesting, and I would like you to comment on this. He said, your mind and your attention, your rational mind and your attention is like a beam of light. If you look at the sky, everything that you can perceive is a sky, is entire sky, but all your sensorial perceptions and your thoughts and everything else, you can think of them like of clouds. So if you watch the clouds, you won't see the sky. You won't see the emptiness behind them. But if you climb on the cloud, for example, you won't get down because you are not aware that you are on that cloud. If you know that your attention is there, that kind of beam of light, you can move it somewhere else. And what is an intuition? Intuitive moments come because you have intention to see that kind of clouds. For example, you feel them with some, I don't know, sixth sense or intuition, or, that they are somewhere on the sky. And you have that intention to meet them. Therefore, you just focus your beam of light to them. So I would like, because that's very, very, you asked before, how do you know, what is the reason why we can't perceive two things at the same time? How and what, or different kind of things in the same time. If we think that way, that we have that kind of beam of light, just one thing, thought or sensorial perception, that could explain.
I don't know how to answer. I would need to do one or maybe several micro-phenomenological interviews with you, and then we could begin to... Yeah,
I did warn you before.
That would be very interesting.
Yes, it would be, but let's not do it now. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I think we'll wrap it up slowly. Gregor, just wait a second. I think I would like to invite you now to wrap it up. Is there something that we really missed, or we didn't understand, or perhaps now you remember that you should say something and we forgot? That's now is the time for like a the last chance to say important stuff.
No, maybe just one thing that Francisco was repeating, that about neurophenomenology.
Yes.
One of he said, to interpret, we need to interpret the neural activity. We need to have an idea of the experience. And it was one of the reasons why neurophenomenology was introduced and important. But he said also, we don't, all we have here is our experience. We cannot escape our experience. It's all we have. Yeah. So it's another, it's an even more profound reason that we even objective facts are facts of experience. So it's another.
This is the biggest mystery for me, because since how is it not a huge mystery for everybody that we can experience, that we can perceive, that we have consciousness? Because nobody knows that. Nobody knows how is it possible that we have like a cup of grams of protein within our skull. Is it possible that from this, somehow this experience comes out? This is, to me, a huge mystery, but sometimes, somehow I feel that it's rarely shared, you know, and that's all we have, it's experience. Brains and tables and lectures, these are just parts of our experience. I think we should finish with this mystery. I would just like to say some technical words at the end. You got some little brochures, and inside you can leave, if you want, your email. You can leave it in order for the Society for Mindfulness to send you information if you are not the member or on their list already. Or you can leave address to my little group of researching experience. We call ourselves Observatory, and we try to meditate and observe experience and do other cognitive science / experience studies. So if you want to be informed about what we do, you can leave the email address to us if you want, and you have to sign it because of these new European rules. That's one thing. I would really like to thank the organizers, which is some of my colleagues, Emma and Florian, but especially to Jean and Eva, because without them there would be no event like that. So thank you to you first, and then of course thank to Claire. I'm not going to pronounce your surname, but I think we are really. If you were studying what I'm studying, you would know what an honor it is to have her here. So I would like to thank you really very much for the whole thing. And there were some more questions. We will stay here for a couple of minutes, so Grega and others, you can just come and talk to us. So thank you, of course.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.